Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. If this is your first time tuning in, my name is Adrielle and I am currently narrating a story time of my former friend being in the occult. In the previous episode, I talked about how I was able to find out that Ruby was basically making up stuff during our conversations, and I guess she probably didn't want me to know what she had going on, but she wanted to know everything I had going on. So I started to sense that maybe this girl is a mind-turning spirit, but I need to be careful with her. So in this episode, I'm going to talk about all the other things that happened in the months of 2020, and then I'll go from there on. So here it goes. So after I found out that Ruby was really crafty, I decided that, okay, I need to be very careful with her as far as our conversations are concerned, and even just being around her. So there would be times where she would invite me to her church and I wouldn't go. To be honest, I really wasn't interested in going, so that was the main reason why I didn't go. Fast forward to July. It's July and it's her birthday. She said that, I called. Yes, I called for her birthday. I want to say it was a couple of days before her birthday I called, but I can't remember. It was either the day before or a couple of days before. But I remember her telling me that her parents were doing something at the house, like a little get together, and she wanted me to come. And I told her, I couldn't because my car insurance expired July 3rd. So I was like, yeah, I don't want to be riding dirty in the streets of Atlanta. But I said, hey, I do want to do something, but I just need my insurance with me. So we decided that, I decided that I was going to take her out. And I did say to her, hey, we're going to go out. I'm going to take you to this particular restaurant. This restaurant was in Perimeter. Could you help me print out my car insurance? Okay. So I did tell her that I was able to get my car insurance on my mobile app on my phone, but just to be on the safe side, let me get my physical copy if she can help me print it out. Also, another thing too, another cop-out that I had was that it was raining where Ruth was staying. It was raining like cats and dogs, so I couldn't go. So that was my other excuse. So that was really my main excuse as to not going, because it was really raining so bad. But looking back, I am so glad I did not go to her birthday get-together at her parents' house. Anyways, it's the day that we meet up at the restaurant. I believe it was July 9th. So we meet up at a restaurant and we're talking. And as we're talking, that's when she mentions like the job search. And then she mentions the whole unemployment insurance. Like, hey, Adriel, why don't you file for the unemployment for the COVID relief program? And I told her, I was like, hey, I didn't work for a long period of time. I didn't work for 18 months, so I don't think I qualify. But she said, hey, my best friend in the program, she got the COVID relief unemployment program, and she didn't work 18 months. So she was like, yeah, Adriel, look into it. If you are able to get it, you would get that $600 every week. Now, this was July. They started the whole $600 every week back in April. So I was like, okay, I'll look into it. So we're there, and then we're talking about, I think I brought up Ruth's apartment, and I was just telling her like, hey, like, man, I need to really leave Ruth's apartment. Like, I need to start strategizing on getting my own place. And she was like, well, why do you want to do that if you don't have a job yet? And I'm like, yeah, it's been 4 months at this point, since I've stayed with Ruth. I think it's time for me to get my own place. Now, here's the thing. I did not tell Ruby that Ruth was basically already giving me the boot to leave, but I was just making it sound like I wanted to leave on my own, which initially, after Ruth was giving me the boot, basically I had the idea of just walking out. So we were just talking. She was like, hey, Adriel, I don't think you should get an apartment right now. You don't have a job. Maybe you should look into the whole idea of renting a room. Now, I did not want to rent a room because this was during basically quarantine. I'm like, I'm not about to live in a house with a bunch of people who are renting rooms and one of them may have the vid. So I really was not interested in renting a room. So she was like, hey, Adriel, I really do think that you should look into renting a room. So that happened. I went back home, looked into it, and yeah, she was right, y'all. Ruby was right about the whole COVID relief unemployment program. The one I did qualify for was a PUA. I applied for it. I took a screenshot, sent it to her. I let her know what I was getting. And honestly, I thanked her, because if she did not tell me, I wouldn't have actually applied for it. I probably would have thought that I did not qualify. So I was really thankful and grateful and fortunate that in that situation, like, Ruby was able to help me. So fast forward to my birthday. It's August 5th, and I'm staying with my friend Esther. Now, if you want to know about Esther and my time in her apartment, please watch An Unlikely Story. So I'm there, and Ruby planned to take me out for my birthday. We were going to go to, Juicy Crab out in Atlanta. There was a death in her family. She lost her grandfather, and she found out in the middle of the night. So she told me in the morning, she called me to wish me happy birthday and asked if we could, reschedule, that she just wants to be present with her mom. And I'm like, yo, I understand completely. We can always reschedule this. So we rescheduled the Juicy Crab birthday lunch August 21st. Now, by this time, I moved into my apartment, and we went to Juicy Crab August 21st. Now, being at Juicy Crab, y'all, this is where things kind of get interesting with Ruby. So we're at the restaurant, and they bring like appetizers or whatever. We ordered appetizers. So Ruby starts asking me, hey, Adriel, do you want to get married before you turn 30? Now, remember, at this time, I'm already telling myself that, hey, I got to be careful with what I say in front of Ruby. So my goal for that entire conversation was to make everything as general as possible. I didn't want to get into specifics as to what I want, as to preferences, as to my goals. I said, I'm going to be super general, super vague. And that was my my motive for that conversation. So when she said, Adriel, do you want to get married before you're 30? And I'm like, hey, if it happens, I would love for that to happen. If I meet somebody that me and that person, we connect, we're on the same wavelength or whatever, I was just saying a bunch of stuff. I would like to, if it happens. And then, so she started asking me about, okay, so I think she started asking me the type of guy I wanted to date or something like that. And I'm like, as long as he's black, as long as he's a black guy, I don't care if he's dark skin, brown skin, middle skin, purple skin. I don't care. I don't care as long as he's black. So that was when she started going into how she wouldn't want to date a guy who's black but light skinned, because if they have kids, that the kids may look like him and another child may look like her. So I said, that's not always the case, because there are people who have gotten married. One is light skinned, one is dark skinned, and their kids are brown. So I think I brought up like the McClure twins or whatever. And then I think she also brought up like Mariah Carey, how her kids have her color. They don't have Nick Cannon's color. So it was just a conversation of how she wants a guy who's dark skinned because all their kids are going to be dark skinned. I'm like, okay, cool. If that's what you want, that's what you want. Me, like I said, I don't care what type of black he is as long as he's black. So she started getting into conversations of, I think, like more into like wanting to know what I desired in a relationship. And I can tell that she was prying and digging and picking. Like I said, I was going to make everything as general as possible. So I kind of was trying to get off topic by saying, but honestly, I would want to get a job first before getting into a relationship, because I don't want to meet a guy and I tell him, well, I'm unemployed. And then he looks at me thinking that I'm looking for a sponsor, So I was like, I would prefer to get a job first. But I'm like, hey, if it happens, it happens. So she was like, so what if you don't get a job? You're not going to date? I'm like, hey, if the guy I'm seeing, like if I see a guy and I tell him I'm unemployed and he's okay with it, then fine. I wouldn't mind dating as long as if he's okay with it, that's cool. But honestly, me personally, I would prefer to have like my own money and like my own job before dating. But like I said, if I meet a guy and he's okay with me being unemployed and he wants to date me, hey, So she was like, okay. So you want to get married before you're 30, right? I'm like, hey, if it happens, you just never know if it happens. And then I remember her asking me if I was talking to somebody. And I'm like, man, with the whole pandemic, we were all in the house. Like, it was so hard, to talk to anyone or see anyone. Now, something I forgot to mention. August 14, that was the day I moved into my apartment. I went into Target to get some stuff from my apartment. After I was done from Target, I went into my car. I don't even know why I called her. I think I probably called her to tell her I moved in. I can't remember why I called her. But I remember calling her, and she was like, hey, Adriel, can I call you later? I'm like, oh, sure. Couple of days later, she told me she was on a date. And I remember telling her, like, oh, my goodness, like, Ruby, you shouldn't have picked up my call. She was like, no. I was like, no, Ruby, like, next time if you're on a date and I call, please do not pick up my call. Like, you can call me whenever, another time. Like, no. I was like, oh my goodness. I'm like, I'm so sorry. I didn't know you were on a date. Like, please do not pick up my call if you're on a date. Our conversation can wait till later on. So I'm like, yo, who is this guy? So we started talking. It was one of the guys at her church. It was a drummer at her church. So they were talking. She was like, yeah, I just started seeing him, started talking. Now, something I thought was interesting was, like I said, y'all, anytime I would talk to Ruby, she would always make me the focus of her conversation. I thought it was interesting that she was so forthcoming when it came to telling me about the guy she was dating, because it just seemed like she was so, like, private. So anyway, she was just telling me about the guy, how, they go to the same church. He's a drummer. He asked her out and all that. I'm like, okay, girl. Okay. So fast forward to us being at Juicy Crab. When she's asking me all these relationship questions, I'm thinking she's asking me because she's seeing somebody. And it's like, girl, if you're seeing someone, that's great, but I'm not seeing anyone, And at the same time, too, y'all, I told myself I had to be careful with Ruby. I was never going to tell her about Brandon. Definitely, that was a big no-no. So she would just, ask me questions about relationships while we were at Juicy Crab. And I basically told her at the end, like, hey, I would really want to get a job before dating anybody. September 10, I'm in my apartment. Ruby sends me a text of an article talking about, the article was about, was this extra $1,800 unemployment benefit check that was going to come to people who were under that COVID relief program. So she sent it to me. I read it and I'm like, oh my goodness, like, Ruby, thank you. Like, I'm like, yo, Ruby's just coming through with the information when it comes to this whole, like, unemployment, PUA, COVID relief programs. I'm like, yo, she's really looking out for me. So that happens. Fast forward to October 16th. We plan to go out. And the reason why we're going out was I remember telling her, like, hey, Ruby, I moved into my apartment. Why don't you come through to see it? Just like she saw my old apartment in North Decatur. Looking back, I should have never done that. But she comes through, and then she comes through to see the apartment. I show her the apartment, and then we decide to go and get lunch somewhere. So she sees the apartment. Now, I do want to say this. When we were heading out from my apartment, we were walking in the hallway towards the car, and we were talking about heights. I'm 5'5", and Ruby told me she was 5'6.5". So when I told Ruby I was 5'5", she was like, you're not 5'5", you're like 5'3". And I'm like, no, I'm not 5'3", I'm 5'5". She's like, I can look down at you. Now, when she says she can look down at me, she put her hand on my head. One thing I don't play about, y'all, is my head. Because I believe your head is your crown. People shouldn't be just touching your head. And I felt like her trying to illustrate that I was way shorter didn't call for her putting her hand on my head. So in my head, I'm like, why is she putting her hand on my head? Now, she was like, I can look down on you. I'm like, girl, you're not looking down at me from the Eiffel Tower. Like, it's not that deep. So we did like a neck, or shoulder to shoulder. Y'all, she was an inch taller than me. I'm like, Ruby, you're just an inch taller than me. I'm 5'5", you're 5'6.5". Yeah. Yeah. So, I don't know. She was trying to prove that I was like 5'3". I'm not 5'3". But what got to me was her putting her hand on my head. I'm like, it didn't call for that. Anyways, let's continue. We go out to this restaurant to eat, right? We get a table, we put in our order. The first thing Ruby says to me is this. So, Adriel, do you want to get married before you're 30 or by the time you turn 30? I'm looking at Ruby. I'm like, Ruby, didn't we have this conversation already? She was like, but Adriel, like, you don't talk about your love life. I'm like, Ruby, we had this conversation at Juicy Crab for an entire hour. We were just talking about relationships. So why are you asking me again? I just feel like you don't talk about your love life. Like, you just don't want to talk about it. I'm like, Ruby, what is there to talk about? I'm not seeing anybody. I'm not talking to anybody. No one's in my vicinity. Yeah, but I feel like you should still share stuff about your, relationship. What relationship? We just got out of a whole Pandarosa. So it's like, Ruby, what are you talking about? We were all locked in the house, quarantined. I wasn't talking to anybody. I didn't see anybody. I didn't meet anyone on the internet. She was like, I just feel like you should still talk about what you have going on. Like, you should still share some stuff. And I'm looking at this girl like, is she like, I don't know what she wants from me. Like, I don't know what information you want. I'm not talking to anybody. So I remember just feeling like weirded out by that. And here's the thing, y'all. She knew I wasn't talking to anybody. So why are you kind of low-key demanding for me to talk about relationships? So that let me know that our conversation at Juicy Crab was her just prying into what I had going on. Because it's like, why are you trying to have the same conversation again? So anyways, we leave after having lunch. We go back to my apartment and we're talking. And I mentioned this guy on YouTube. He's a Christian YouTuber. And at the time, he was like a 29-year-old virgin. So he would tell about his story on YouTube, just talk about his testimony and everything, and just share his struggles and just share share his faith, as a Christian 29-year-old virgin. So I brought him up in our conversation, and she says this. She says, oh, so he's a Christian that's not having sex. So I said yes, but in my mind, I was kind of confused as to what she was trying to insinuate, because as a Christian, you shouldn't have sex before marriage or outside of marriage. But I just said yes, he's a Christian that's not having sex. Now, this comes back up later on in a different conversation years later. So we're talking about relationships again. And this is what she says, y'all. She says, I wouldn't mind dating a guy that's a personal trainer. So when she said that, immediately I'm like, why did she say that? Now, to her defense, Ruby is someone who cares about fitness. Like, she works out. She has a whole gym membership. She cares about that. She wants whoever she dates to be into fitness as well. Okay, so it does make sense. But it didn't make sense that she said it out of the blue. So she was like, yeah, I would want it to marry a guy, to date a guy that is a personal trainer. So when she said that, I'm like, Adriel, take it one step at a time. Take it easy. So I was like, oh, okay. And then she was like, wouldn't you want to date a guy that's a personal trainer? Like, wouldn't you want to marry him? Like, if you're pregnant, he can get you back in shape. Because I know if I marry a guy that's a personal trainer, he can get me back in shape. Like, wouldn't you want that? So I said to her, like, you know what? Like, that's actually true. Because personal trainers are expensive. If I do marry a guy who's a personal trainer, he can get me back to shape. But you know who I really want to marry? A guy who's a mechanic, because getting an oil change is mad expensive. You know, fixing up your car, the maintenance of your car, it's expensive. So I would want a guy who's a mechanic. Now, I only said that to throw her off, y'all. I only said that to throw her off, because it's like, why are you talking about personal trainers, marrying a personal trainer training you after you give birth out of nowhere? So I'm like, does she know something? Because remember, I had thoughts of her being a monitoring spirit back in March of 2020. So I'm like, okay, Adriel, just be careful. So she's still at my apartment, and she tells me about a job. Now, she told me about this job at the restaurant. It was a customer service job, remote. She was telling me that I should apply for it. Now, the job was offering like $17 an hour. And I remember telling her, like, hey, Ruby, they're offering $17 an hour. I have a master's degree. I can't work at this company. I can't work this position. And she was like, oh, Adriel, at least it's something, you know, it's something. I'm like, yeah, but I have a master's degree. She's like, yeah, but you don't have anything going on right now. Like, you don't have a job, so you might as well just have something for now. I'm like, yeah, I get that, but I have a master's degree. I didn't understand why she would recommend me a job that's paying $17 an hour when she's not even making $17 an hour at all. So I was like, okay, what's going on? So that happens. Now, I do want to add that the restaurant situation was October 17. We planned October 16. So I'm going to stop the episode right here, y'all. Next episode, I'm going to get into some other stuff that happened with Ruby. Things started to become weirder towards the end of 2020 and beginning of 2021. I'm going to get into that. And yeah, so if you are liking this story time, please like, comment, and subscribe. Please also tune into an unlikely story as well. And until next time, y'all, bye.